Hi, welcome back to Hares and Hyena, where they have great coffee too. We're doing Meet Your Candidates Forum 2014 with 4 parties talking about issues important to the LGBTI community. Brought to you by starobserver.com.au, prideTV.com.au, and thanks to the Victorian Gay and Lesbian Rights Lobby. Let's meet our panel.
Fiona Patten from the Australian Sex Party, standing for the seat of Northern Metro.
Clem Newton, Brown, member for Paran.
Sam Hibbins, Greens candidate for Paran.
Neil Pharoah, Labor candidate for Paran.
Young people in our community, you know, those under the age of 25. I had to say that because everybody goes, oh, what's a young person? I'm a young person at 30 something or other. But those under the age of 25. We know they've had higher rates of suicide, higher rates of mental health issues, most often will deal with the coming out process in that time. What are your parties going to do for these young people in our community?
I think there's 2 areas that have really been highlighted to me recently. Again, the discrimination that same-sex attracted young people get while they're at school. And a lot of that is allowed because we allow religious schools to discriminate against people. And we've got to stop that. First and foremost, we need to stop that exemption of to be able to discriminate on the grounds of religion. Secondly, we need an extensive sex and relationship curriculum that needs to start, I would say, at kindergarten and go through to year 12. If we can give age-appropriate education throughout our school curriculum, we will improve the health and well-being of our same-sex attracted young people. We will decrease the discrimination and homophobia that they're experiencing at school. And we will make that coming out process a lot easier. I mean, nothing's easy when you're a teenager, but we can help.
Cory, for kids, whether they're LGBTI or otherwise, it's about feeling wanted, feeling they have got a place in the world. And it is so hard when kids are going through puberty into the early adulthood to find their place, and particularly hard for kids who are same-sex attracted. Probably one of the most impressive people I've met in my time on the job is Micah from Minus 18. And he set up this program from his bedroom, the same-sex formal, and where the idea was to include kids who didn't feel they could go to their own school formal. And he didn't have any funding. That's one of the things I'm most proud of as the Nathfarn government has increased his funding to the point where he's now a fully fledged organisation. He's got a board and he's doing not just the same-sex formal, but having really significant connections with young people. So having those connections is really important. Safe Schools Coalition is something which was in a pilot stage when we came into government. It's now got recurrent funding that has increased year on year, and that's another program which assists with bullying within schools. There's been various programs through the Hay grants which we have set up, which we've increased in a re-elected government. We'll increase that to $4.9 million, and that's all about connecting people with their peers and finding that place in the world for them.
Sam, you've got a lot of useful volunteers in the Green Party.
Well, yeah, I'm actually, when I work in the community sector, I worked as a youth worker, working with young people, so I'm well aware of the challenges that they can face, whether it's at home, at school, out in the community for LGBTI young people. And it's because of homophobia is the reasons why you mentioned that they're overrepresented, whether it's in homelessness or in disadvantage. So obviously we need to tackle homophobia wherever it exists. Whether that's through the Hay grants, making sure that young people's voices are heard, and expanding the Safe Schools Coalition. But it's also important that we get that leadership from our elected representatives. I can't imagine just how damaging it is when we get elected representatives on the TV being homophobic and spouting homophobic views. So it's really important that we get that leadership from our elected representatives.
Neil, you succeeded to get Safe Schools Coalition Victoria taken all around the country when you were the National Convener of Rainbow Labor. What can you do if you were the state member for Paran?
Well, look, I think that's illustrative of the outcomes the LGBTI community really wants. It was a Labor government who first seated Minus 18 in the Safe Schools Coalition in Victoria, and it's a Labor government that's committed to rolling out the Safe Schools Coalition to every single public secondary school across Victoria if elected in November. That is the single biggest issue facing many young LGBTI people, brought about by a number of circumstances, but rolling the Safe Schools Coalition statewide is a huge commitment. Continuing continuing the work of Minus 18, which started under the former Labor government, is a huge commitment. But I've also got two other interest areas in this space for LGBTI young people. The first is looking at the arts and creative arena and what opportunities there are for expression in that space. And that's something I will be personally focused towards in Parliament. But there's also a deeper issue here, and that is representation of LGBTI people in Parliament. We have never elected an openly LGBTI person to the lower house in Victoria, and that sends an important message against barriers and against homophobia and against people looking up in their community and going, that's the best way to ensure equality and representation in diverse communities. So again, Safe Schools Coalition, Minus 18, representation in Parliament, all of these things I think are vital for young people, and looking at things differently and having that representation. So issues, for instance, for young people who are homeless as a result of their sexuality and the coming out experience is something I'm also personally passionate about.
All right, so we've got lots of things on the table there for it. Have you costed your policies yet?
Safe Schools Coalition has been costed.
How much are we investing there?
I can't remember off the top of my head. It is in the millions of dollars to roll it out statewide to every school in Victoria.
And you're spending millions of dollars doing hay grants?
Well, $4 million, and we'll increase that to $4.9 million, and that's something which Daniel Andrews hasn't committed to matching.
And are you doing Safe Schools like they're doing?
Safe Schools Coalition is being funded, it's increased funding, it's not rolled out to every school. We think that in consultation with Safe Schools Coalition, that the model actually works when schools invite them in. To enforce it on every school when they're not ready for it is counterproductive. So certainly the funding that's there is sufficient for those schools that have sorted out, and certainly my commitment would be that if we end up with a shortfall of funding because more schools need it or want it, then we'll certainly be fighting for increases.
What about getting this religious exemption that Fee mentioned? Any party's got that on their platform?
That's free.
Yeah. You've got
Yes,
a green platform?
The Labor Party federally committed to the first removal of religious exemption and provision of aged care services under a federal government. And it's a great question as to why not just religious exemptions, but things like special religious instructions, which do often preach homophobic dogma, are still taught in schools across Victoria.
You're the Parliamentary Secretary for Education. You have to deal with some of these issues of homophobia in some of these schools. Is getting rid of this legislation the way to do it, or is there other ways to tackle it?
Homophobia is illegal, so if that is the case, then there are avenues to pursue that. But certainly, as far as the success of Safe Schools Coalition, we had an issue in a school up in Ballarat, I think, where a child wanted to bring her best friend who happened to be the same sex to the formal, and the school was told that they couldn't do it, or the school told her that she couldn't do that. So we called up Ros, and she negotiated with the school, and we got an outcome that was achieved through Dean Beck actually assisting in making it public. And that's a really good example of how having the resources of Safe Schools Coalition to be called in when there's a role for them to solve a problem was really very satisfying to see it work in action.
Final word, Sam.
Well, I think it's about values, and discrimination and homophobia have no place in Victoria, and I think it's so important that when people think of Victoria, we think of a diverse state that celebrates its diversity, celebrates its LGBTI community, and I think that would send the most powerful message to young people in Victoria. Well, thanks everybody for coming. I hope you've enjoyed your cup of tea. Come on down to Here's sometime and enjoy a great cup of coffee. Thanks for coming and listening to the Meet Your Candidates Forum 2014.